All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Kitchen. I'm Special Assistant to County Executive Stuart Pitman, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Thank you for joining us for the second webinar in our Engage Arundel webinar series entitled Open Data, Open Government, How Access Empowers Community Transparency. Engage Arundel is designed to foster collaboration and communication between government and the community. The initiative aims to engage citizens both online and in-person events, providing them with platforms to voice concerns, share ideas, and work with the county government. Types of engagement include webinars, weekly newsletters, informational sessions, in-person or online, award ceremonies, summits, community events, social media, online resources, and much more. Goals and benefits include transparency and accountability, increased civic engagement, creating more partnerships and collaborations, and building stronger communities. Before we begin, I'd like to quickly go over some of the housekeeping items to ensure the session runs smoothly. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded. If you need to step away or would like to review the content later, we'll be sending out a recording after the event. A copy of the presentation will also be provided. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen. We will address as many questions as possible during the Q&A session, during the webinar, and also at the end as well. So thank you again for joining us. I'd now like to introduce our first speaker. Leading today's discussion is the Director of ArundelStat, Elizabeth Funch. Elizabeth joined the Pitman administration in October 2019 as Director of ArundelStat to build the Performance, Data, and Stat program in Anne Arundel County. She has served in this position for the last 5 years. Prior to this, Elizabeth was a senior analyst for the County Stat program in Prince George's County, where she oversaw the process for monitoring and shaping the government to be more efficient and productive, and worked as senior program evaluator at the State of Maryland Department of Mental Health and Hygiene. Elizabeth holds a Master of Public Health and a Master of Arts from the University of Arizona. And now, Elizabeth, it's over to you.
Thank you, James. And thank you for the introduction, and thank all of you for joining us today. I am excited to hear from all of you and from our presenters as well, and share with you some of the work that ArundelStat has done. For those of you who are not familiar, ArundelStat is the performance and analytics team for the county that researches, reviews data, and produces guidance for county leadership to assist them in data-driven decisions. ArundelStat was first started during the first term of the Pitman administration. One of the inaugural projects for my team was the collaboration with OIT to launch OpenArundel. OpenArundel links to tools, reports, and encourages civic engagement. This will be covered in more detail later in this webinar. In addition to OpenArundel, ArundelStat launched and maintains the Department Performance Data Initiative, which encompasses 30 departmental and quasi-departmental departments to track performance and publishes the annual data for these departments on open performance. ArundelStat also spearheads the implementation of the Open Data Act, which expands the data sets available on open data. Both open data and open performance are subsets of OpenArundel. ArundelStat works in collaboration with other departments to provide analysis, build and maintain dashboards, and we also provide a bit of technical assistance, sometimes building dashboards that are then maintained by the department. We have collaborated with the Office of Personnel, the Budget Office, the Department of Health, the Police Department, the Office of Law, the Office of Equity and Human Rights, and Animal Care and Control, to name a few. Some of our collaborations include the County Workforce Diversity Dashboard. We partnered with Personnel and the Office of Equity and Human Rights for this project. We partnered with the Office of Equity and Human Rights again, along with the police department, to produce the hate bias incident dashboard. And for the affirmative litigation case dashboard, we collaborated with the Office of Law. These are just a few examples of our collaborations. To get us started, the county executive, who is committed to government accountability and transparency, sent a short welcome video as he was unable to join us. So now we're excited to hear from the county executive.
Hello, I am County Executive Stuart Pitman, and I want to welcome you and thank you for participating in Engage Arundel and the work that our team is doing to really help residents do a good job of advocating and really engaging with local government. It's really important, I think, to learn about what OpenArundel does. So we put this team together at the beginning of our administration specifically to give residents the information and the tools that they need so that when you go to me or the county council or any of our agencies to advocate, you have facts and you have data. We use it as well. I use it in my decision making all the time, whether it's at budget time or we're looking at the performance of a department and really assessing whether what we're doing is working. So all of us will be working with the same numbers. What is neat about what you're doing right now is you're going to get introduced to some of the cool features that we have on OpenArundel on the website. And you're going to be introduced to it by the people who put it together in most cases. So we've got the budget tool where you can look at everything in past budgets and participate in that process and really know what we've been investing in. There are the public safety dashboards where you can look at data. We've got now integrated the school systems dashboards as well, so you can look at graduation rates and performance of our schools. And then there's the whole topic of land use. We created the Land Use Navigator so that permitting is all done online, which means that we have a whole lot of data on development applications, and it's all linked to maps, really cool GIS maps if you're into that have a huge amount of information, and you can really get to know this county well. So I'm glad that you're here. It may not be the most exciting topic in the world, bunch of data nerds talking about data, but it's really effective stuff. And when you use it and you advocate with it, you will be heard. Thank you.
Okay, can you guys see my screen? Elizabeth?
Yes, but it's just a Google.
Yes, okay. No worries. Okay, so sorry, switching from video to this. So as we heard County Executive Pitman mention, I'm now going to be showing you how to access OpenArundel and what are some ways you can use it. So first you can do is just go to OpenArundel and Arundel County, and it will be this first one, the first link, and you will have access, as he mentioned, your budget, open performance. I don't know if you guys already have saved the AA County website, but that is also another way you can access it. Just go to aacounty.org, and in the top right-hand corner, you will see OpenArundel. So I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about your budget, mainly because budget season is around the corner, and I do want us for you guys to know about it more and to be better prepared for it. So we first have understanding the budget, a timeline, when to expect the town halls, what happens after the town halls. We also have how is Anne Arundel County funded, so mainly can see property taxes, local income tax. And then, of course, the question we mainly all have is, how are your tax dollars spent? So when we come down here, we see Board of Education, public safety. But maybe you want to know more about public safety. Maybe you want to see more about how funding is for that. So a great tool here is Budget Data and Development Explorer, also known as Buddy. And it's going to go ahead and open up and going to go to operating expenditures. And when you go to operating expenditures, you're going to see the breakdown by department. And we're going to focus right now on the fire department. And by doing this, we'll now see how much is allocated to personnel services, contractual services. You can also see the budget the fire department has had over the years, how it's divided between the fire department, between operations, planning, and logistics. If you're also curious about how many positions there are and how large the department is, you can go in and see how it has changed over the years, number of positions over history. But what if you want to know more about what the fire department is doing? And this is where Open Performance lets you know more about the work and the data that the department is doing. So I went to OpenArundel, Open Performance, and we see that they have emergency medical services. We see their mission, we see their core services. And their first goal is to provide emergency medical services to county residents and visitors. And they have broken this down into 3 main categories, right? Improve first arriving advanced life support units, improve first arriving EMS providers with AED, improve first arriving EMS travel time to non-critical incidents. But let's say you want to know even more about how this was collected. So you would click on View Trend and Analysis. And here we would get the background. We would see what the department thinks about this program or initiative, what they expect, what the analysis or trend is. And then we get to the numbers here. And this is really important for when budget season comes. You do have the you can see how resources have been allocated over the past years, how if workload or demand has changed, and you can go in and say, for whatever department or initiative, you can say the resources from 2021 to 2023 have remained the same, but the workload demand has doubled, has increased by whatever percentage. But this is just one way you can use information from the budget, information from data, Open Performance to really advocate for funding for certain initiatives and seeing the work that the departments are doing. Another way I'm going to show you how to access Open Performance is, I know we always talk about roads, right? Everyone wants to know the state of the roads. So I just searched DPW and Arundel County, and on the department's main page, we're going to go down and we're going to see department performance data. If it is also available on department's main page. And again, DPW does safe drinking water, wastewater treatment, efficiently recycle, collect trash, and of course, what we want to know, roads. So we see that they have 3 objectives for roads, and we see they want to increase the percentage of preventative maintenance, increase the percentage of potholes, right? They're doing really well, they're on track, but we want to know a little bit more about the roads in our area. So we're going to look at maintain an average pavement condition. So I'm going to go in and see. And again, the background tells me how the road is assessed or rated every 3 years. We have the analysis and trend. And again, we have the numbers, the resources, the workload, which all can be used when talking to council member, going to budget town hall. But certain initiatives by departments will also have links. So let's look at the current pavement condition rating information available. So clicking on this map, it's going to take me in here. And I live near Crofton, so let's do Chapel. And so by doing this, by clicking on a road, I'm going to see the pavement rating. It's an 88. I'm going to go over here near Rydell Road. It's a pavement rating of 78. Based on this legend, I'm going to click on the red, and I'm going to see that there's an active pavement program, and that it's with fiscal year 24 funds. I click to the right, and I see it's a pavement rating of 57. So again, using the resources that's available via maps, different things, as a community, you can look at the condition of your roads. You can use this information when requesting, why hasn't this road been improved? You can look at the pavement rating. You can look at the surrounding areas And you can use this information to back up your request and really go more in depth when you are asking for things, whether it's from the county executive, budget town halls, or just as a community, you just want to know the condition of your roads. Okay, and now I'm going to pass it to Elizabeth.
Neri, thank you. So we had a little bit of an oversight. Neri Ordaz is an analyst on the ArundelStat team who was integral in putting this webinar together. Thank you so much, Neri, for that presentation. And I hope all of you take a minute and go explore what is available. So I am so sorry. Let me get myself on video. I'm sorry, I should have been on video. So our next speaker is Jamie Lees. I'm really excited to introduce her. Jamie Lees is the Chief Data Officer in Arlington County, Virginia, and she served in this role since 2019. She believes in the democratization of data to inform policies and practices that serve all equitably. She's responsible for ethically and innovatively leveraging the county's data assets with particular focus on data stewardship and constituent and employee reuse of administrative data for the public good. Jamie is responsible for the county's data analytics, open data, and data privacy programs. She previously served in an IT leadership role for nonprofit organization, the National Academy of Science and the American Geophysical Union. She's a certified project management professional and a graduate of NYU's GovLab executive course on data stewardship, and serves on the governing bodies of the Mid-Atlantic Stat Network and DC Evanta CDO community. She relentlessly pursues business value through effective harnessing of data to inform and guide decision-making, planning, and performance management. When not dating, Jamie may be found outdoors with her nose in a book. Thank you so much for joining us, Jamie. And I'm going to pass it over to you now.
My pleasure. I think my introduction might be longer than my presentation, so I appreciate all the kind words. And Neri and Elizabeth, both, congratulations on OpenArundel. That is a really awesome tool, a great combination of raw data and mapping and measures that I think should be super helpful. So I'm looking forward to sharing a little about what Arlington has been doing in the open data space. As Elizabeth said, I'm Jamie Lees, and I serve as the Chief Data Officer in Arlington. And I'll be talking about two aspects of open data. First, the use case for centralizing administrative data, and second, some practical applications of open data. Arlington's open data portal, for those who want to check it out, can be found at data.arlingtonva.us. I am lucky to have a sister team in Arlington that handles data architecture, and both our teams agree on this quote: "You can only realize the benefit of centralized data if its architecture is well thought out to meet your needs." Next slide, Mary. So why did we create the Open Data Portal and its Data Hub backend? Well, the main benefit is to have a single discoverable place for ready-to-use data that is accessible to all community members and to staff. Another benefit is having internally consistent and accurate information. If you want your staff to be data-driven, it is a very hard sell for them to have to go find or create their own data. And if they should persevere in doing exactly that, then you have a complex data governance challenge. Providing this platform is a lot easier for everyone. So considerations that we needed to address in the design and revisit as we publish new data sets to the portal are cybersecurity, data privacy, and data quality. The cyber concerns are, I'm sure, I'm still on the other slide, are, I'm sure, familiar to everyone on the call. The more data that's out there, the more risk of it being used for unwelcome purposes. And then for data privacy, we have to consider that while a standalone data set may not have any information that the data owner considers personal, different agencies have different perspectives. Once you put a data set into a collection, it can then be associated or joined to other data sets, allowing direct or indirect identification of individuals. At least in Arlington, that is not popular. Another benefit of a centralized repository is having a repeatable process for vetting your data sets for security and privacy concerns, and also for validating data quality. This is a primary focus for Arlington's open data initiatives this year, trying to automate the review and identification of data quality issues for new and refreshed data sets. Okay, now Neri. To help mainstream the use of open data by county staff, I've spent a lot of the last few years focused on data privacy governance. One of the key challenges across all the county departments is identifying privacy impacting activities. This is not a skill we have built until very recently. We have an active data privacy working group to help develop tools, guidance, and training for county staff. Information which we share on our internal website, which is what you're seeing here. Our working group also provides support to departments with limited privacy expertise. I will add, I think that came out a little weird. We definitely handle privacy for things like HIPAA data and criminal justice data. It's all this new stuff, sensor data and health data that comes in on watches, micro mobility devices. These things aren't currently regulated, and that's where we're building our skills. Okay, next slide. I thought it might be helpful to take a quick look at how the data flow that feeds open data is set up. On the very left side, we begin with all of our administrative systems used by our different departments. From them, we extract that data automatically where feasible and manually where necessary. And then we load the data into our backend data hub and perform cleaning and transformation tasks to ready the data for reuse. The cleaned data is then made available to our website content and website applications, for our open data portal, and for analytics and data visualizations. Next slide, please. I'll have to admit, I began the Open Data Initiative with a bit of a field of dreams mindset. If we build it, they will come. But once they come, what are they doing with the data? How is the data being used to support our community? Well, we invite Open Data Portal visitors to share their applications with us, and then we give visibility to their work on the Open Data Portal. So we are able to see some of that and let them get some shine. Our biggest known open data users remain staff, and we encourage them to use not just Arlington Open Data, but also other reputable and public data sets. The key is finding data that can drive and inform action. Next slide, please. One such use of open and public data is Arlington's Race and Ethnicity Dashboard. On this, we can readily see the aggregated data for all of Arlington, and then if you use a little drop down on the top, disaggregated data by race. When we see that Black and African American households earn half the median and per capita income than white households and have experienced 3 times the poverty level, that is fact on which we can act. We use the dashboard to examine disparities over time and gauge our progress. We are currently also developing a vulnerability areas base map. This is going to show through a number of inputs where our most vulnerable communities are, and then we overlay that with administrative data such as vehicular accidents, tree canopies, snowplow routes to ensure equitable and appropriate service delivery. Next slide, please. Another use of centralized administrative data is our own performance management. We are piloting a departmental performance management approach that allows us to collect and use our operational data at the bottom layer to monitor what we're doing, to demonstrate value, that's the middle layer, and to measure progress against strategic goals at the top. We believe this approach will increase the reuse of administrative data to inform our situational awareness and guide planning and resource allocation. We also hope to reduce reporting fatigue and inconsistencies. Fingers crossed. I'll pause here so we can have plenty of time for discussion. Thanks, Neri.
Okay, so any Okay, so Timothy, looking at your question, first of all, do we have any questions for Jamie Lees? Okay, Timothy, looking at the question that you put in the chat, we do have a gun violence, and I think Elizabeth just answered it, but in open data, we do have the section under public safety where you can go ahead and look at the available information we have currently.
Can we read what that question was?
Yes. It is gun violence has been declared a public health crisis in the county, and much was made of the fact that all our solutions would be data-driven. Will you show us what data is being used to assess our progress in this area? And Elizabeth sent the link to this. But again,
So, yeah, Timothy, this is such a great question. So the Gun Violence Intervention Task Force here in the county is actually housed with the Department of Health. And so the link I put in the chat is actually for the data dashboard. So it has a lot of information about the homicides, suicides, all incidents, and the information from that dashboard comes from both the Annapolis Police Department and the Anne Arundel County Police Department. So if you have any additional questions, please let us know. We can get you connected with the right people, but hopefully that will give you a great place to start to see the work that is being done to address gun violence in our county. So our next presentation is actually going to be a panel. I'm really excited that we are able to have a panel on how data access empowers communities. The panelists for this session are Jamie Lees from Arlington County, again, is going to join us. And as a reminder, she's the Chief Data Officer for Arlington County, Virginia. We also have Amber Barnett, who's the Assistant Director of Equity and Human Rights for Anne Arundel County, as well as James Kitchen, who is a Special Assistant to the County Executive. Amber Barnett is a creative, avid world traveler, a plant and dog mama with a higher education enthusiast, mental health advocate, and a two-time HBCU graduate of student life. In June 2024, so not too long ago, Amber joined the Office of Equity and Human Rights as the Assistant Director of the office. Her extensive background as an educator, both at the secondary and post-secondary level, she has shaped the unique perspective that she brings to advancing equity in local government. She enjoys working collaboratively with departments to apply an equity lens to their policies, programs, and projects and procedures that will improve outcome gaps, both internal and external, to the organization. To this role, Amber also brings her expertise as a trainer and facilitator, where she applies an intersectional lens to educate the workforce. Amber is confident that her passion for building meaningful and authentic relationships to co-create solutions with community members, combined with her experience as an equity practitioner, will cultivate a sense of belonging and communal healing and equitable access across the county. And then James Kitchens, who is currently the Special Assistant to the County Executive, joined the Pitman administration in December 2018 to serve as the Community Engagement Officer. To serve as a community engagement officer. He was promoted to serve as the director of the Office of Community Engagement and Constituent Services. He served in that position for the remainder of County Executive Pitman's first term, where he increased communication and engagement with the community members across the county. He currently serves as Special Assistant to the County Executive. He engages directly with community leaders on major policy initiatives. He holds a PhD in public policy from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. His specialization is urban policy, which focuses on the governance of cities and suburbs. His research areas were education policy, as well as state and local immigration policy. He grew up in Crofton and currently resides there with his family. So thank you so much for joining us for this panel, How Data Access Empowers Communities. And to start, I just want to throw a question out to the panel. How can transparency initiatives like OpenArundel improve trust in local government?
I'm happy to jump in. So one of the things I think that is important for us to understand is the why when we talk about a lack of trust in local government. And so, there are studies out here that talk about some of those different reasons. I think a study from Deloitte came out and they talked about social and cultural reasons like age, generational age differences, right? How do different generations engage with government? It could be agency or department based, right? What are our experiences with different agencies or organizations? What is our distance from the community? How connected are we to the community? And what is our digital experience like? And so it really depends on the reason for the distrust. But I think that initiatives like OpenArundel really give our community members an opportunity to see themselves reflected in the work and the priorities of local government, particularly for those communities that have been historically disenfranchised and or marginalized, right? They now become visible to government. And government is our provider of resources, opportunities, programs, and services. And so I think OpenArundel really helps kind of start to bridge the gap in trust because people are able to see themselves in the work, in the data that we are providing.
And I guess I would add on to that the opportunity areas for an open data platform, not the check the box, right? The be able to publish useful information, particularly that information that aligns with current initiatives and priorities. The previous question was about gun violence, right? You can't say something is a top priority and then not back it up with the information you're using. And what I liked about the OpenArundel platform was the storytelling aspect, not just the number, but how the number was derived and how it was used. If you tell people you're aiming to do something, then this is a great opportunity to follow up and say, and here's how it went. And it won't always go well. That's one of the rubs, is that sometimes things don't move as fast as we would like. But that's what transparency is about, to say we recognize an ongoing issue and we're going to keep working at it. And just on the data nerd side of things, data quality is really key here too. As soon as your data is shown to be of poor quality, whether it's incomplete, there's not enough of it, or it's inaccurate, or it doesn't make sense, it's out of the expected ranges, you've lost that trust component. And it's really hard to rebuild from there. So I'll pause there.
So I think what I would just add is that just putting data out there, I think, shows a willingness on the side of government to be transparent and invite citizens to come in. And a part of that is critique us, right? Like, we represent the residents of Anne Arundel County. The county executive does. We work for him. And, if the data shows that we're not doing something well, point it out, right? But having that information out there publicly for everyone to see, I think, speaks to the values of the county executive to say, hey, like, we want to work for the county and for the residents. And so if you see things that don't match in the data, it's an invitation to engage with local government. And I just think that that approach can create trust. But then too, to really have open data create trust, you have to make decisions based on it. And so if we put it all out there, but we're not using it to make decisions, I don't think that having it necessarily creates trust. I think it, again, signals that this is the way we want to do things, but we have to follow through and actually use it. And that is where I think the trust is built.
So I have sort of a follow-up question, James. I think I'll start with you just because of your previous role with
Elizabeth, I cannot hear you.
No.
I don't.
I can hear you very quietly.
Okay. You can hear me now. Okay,
Thanks.
good. Because I did remember to take myself off mute that time. So I think, James, I want to start with you for this question, primarily because of your background as the director of CECS. But thinking about what is available on specifically our tool, but generally tools such as this, how might residents use the information in a tool such as this to advocate for change or improvements in their neighborhoods, or, you know, another issue that they might be passionate about?
Yeah, so I think one, I'm going to go kind of like towards the budget process and asking for things as communities, like at the county executive's budget town halls, where he invites people to come and tell, him and local council members how residents, you all, would like the government to spend your money. I think it's an opportunity to have those testimonies, right? And what people are asking for, like, be backed up by data. I find that most of the time, like the gut of community members and of residents of the county, in most cases are pretty on point. But it helps to have data to be able to show that, right? So if you're in West County and you're saying, hey, we don't have the same number of parks like near our homes, we want to build us what was it, Odenton Community Park. You can use these platforms and look at where parks are, and it does show an inequity in parks in the north and western part of the county, right? And so then it's a family, it's a parent coming in and saying, hey, this is my experience, I know it to be true, but my experience is also backed up by the data on this platform, and that becomes a more compelling argument for how we spend your tax dollars.
Amber, did you want to add on to that one?
Elizabeth, you are on mute now.
Amber or Jamie, do you have anything to add on to how residents could use a tool to advocate for themselves?
I do. I think I have a good follow-up to some of the things that James mentioned, right? I think that we really get the opportunity to know and understand who our community members are through data. And I will say a caveat is that we really want to avoid any deficit-based lenses, right, and approaches when we're framing the data. So recognizing that all of our community members have something to contribute. And so, this might look like we don't want to present and highlight data where, let's say, our BIPOC community members are experiencing disparities and or inequities in comparison to another group, right? So just thinking about the way we talk about those things. And once we really know who our community members are, where they are, and sometimes even what their needs are based on the data that we're collecting, we learn to meet them where they are. So does this require us to, based on the data, does this require us to hold meetings at a community center within the target zip code? Because data tells us that 20% of the population in that zip code doesn't have access to a car, right? So these are some of the ways we might start to think about how we use the data. It could mean that when we're seeking feedback in a community where we know 75% of those community members are native Spanish speakers, that we want to make sure that we're translating our documents and that we, maybe there's some kind of translation available on site. And so it really helps us to engage with the community in the ways that they need and not the ways that we think they need. And so I think that OpenArundel is a really great tool for providing a baseline and even longitudinal data that helps community members really understand county programs and services that directly affect them. So thinking about, going back to Neri's point about streets, right? When streets are being repaved, when zoning changes are happening in their neighborhoods, how school districts are decided, right? These are all things that affect people's day-to-day lives. And so having this data really kind of gives them something to layer over the gut, right? The gut feelings that they're having that James mentioned, to be able to advocate for changes that they would like to see in their respective communities.
Yeah, I think James and Amber have really covered this. One small piece I would add is it really helps to have a conversation where there's an opportunity to speak from the same information. People don't always see the information the same way, but if at least we're saying it's 27 here and 54 there, and that's good or that's bad, and not putting the burden on the community member to find and compile and figure it out. If there's trust in the information out there, then it allows us to agree and disagree, but using a common set of information. I think it really facilitates the conversation. I think there's also opportunities for jurisdictions to push that information out, like Amber was saying, and James also. I've seen a lot of engagement around data walks. So you put up some posters that shows how the street paving is going, how the traffic studies are going, all these things. And people say, oh, okay, now I know. And now I know why you were asking for that information, or why that truck's been on my street or in my neighborhood for 2 weeks. That's all good, or maybe that's bad. So just putting that onus on the jurisdiction and not on the members, I think, is really the opportunity here. Elizabeth? Is Elizabeth very quiet for everybody else? Yeah.
It might be very quiet. I will say I got a brand new computer a day ago, so I think it's working out some of the kinks. Hopefully I will return to normal volume.
It seems like it just needs to warm up.
Okay. So, so is access to data enough? So just sort of having the information there and available, or is access enough just to drive change, or are there other factors that are involved too?
I'd like to jump in on this one first.
Okay, Jamie.
No. I just wanted to get there before Amber and James did. Access is definitely not enough. And I'm sure both James and Amber will highlight community member focus. I'll maybe start on the data side. One of the big reasons why data is not enough is that not everybody knows how to use it. How can they find it? How can they download it? How can they analyze it? And that's really on us to provide those tools and those means to engage. Some are not going to have appropriate internet devices or analysis tools. This is for sure a work in progress in Arlington, but that is a major onus. Just having the data and making it available, definitely not enough. Another aspect is the data storytelling piece. This is a skill we're really building in our workforce and that our community may not have. It's really hard to look at a table and figure out what it's trying to tell you and how things have happened and changed over time. And that was one of the things I highlighted about the OpenArundel platform. It's great to see, walk me through it, and I can agree or disagree, but at least I've got not just a table, but a way to understand that information. Let me pass it on now.
Yeah, so I would have said no right away too. So I appreciate that, Jamie. Data helps tell a story, but I think, of equal, if not more importance, are values, right? So we can look at the same numbers and say, hey, the budget is, this many of dollars this year. And, one person might look at that and say, wow, that's not enough because we do still need more teachers and firefighters and police officers and road maintenance workers and these things, right? And then other people might look at that number and say, well, wait, that, it's a lot bigger than it was, 6 years ago. That it's way too much, right? And so, numbers give us data points, but they don't give us necessarily like values. And so I think just like the values of our communities and our residents are also very important. And so it's, again, I think using the data to support values, or being able to talk about that common set of data as we debate what our values are and what the direction should go in. But access to the data, in and of itself isn't going to create that change. It is, got to be, a community driven, these are our values of what we want to see our government do. And that is a back and forth that, it will continue no matter how good our data is.
I echo all of what James and Jamie said, and I also agree that no, there are definitely other factors involved when we're talking about driving change, and having access to data is just a starting point. And kind of like Jamie said, people may not know how to read it and process it. They may not know where to go to find it. They have to understand, how to make the connections. And to Jamie's point, that's our responsibility to do, right? How do we tell the story and start to bridge some of the numbers, right? Sometimes people look, and it's one thing to hear qualitative data, right? Stories, narratives, anecdotes. It's something totally different to see those experiences reflected in numbers. And so what is our role and responsibility in pulling all that data together to help us build and articulate community stories and lived experiences, so that we can empower folks to participate and engage with government, and be a part of decisions that directly affect them. So I think that is all I have to add in terms of whether or not data is enough to drive change. Oh, Elizabeth, I think we've lost you again.
Good.
There you go.
Okay, I don't know, maybe I need to start speaking and then start speaking again, I guess is how it's working. So what I was saying was, it was not surprising to me in working in this space that the overarching answer was no. But right now we live in a world where like technology and AI and all of these things are sort of upon us and changing. For us, some days it feels like faster than we can keep up. So I'm curious what role do you see technology playing in making the government more accessible and accountable to its residents?
Ooh, that's a good one. I can kind of start here. I am also a data nerd. I love reading reports, data sets. I am the person that's going to pull all those things up, but I recognize that everyone's not me. So again, how do we get people to understand the relevance of data to them in their lives? I will say that more often than not, data can be hard to read, difficult to make sense of. It gets buried in all these other things and can become impossible to find for someone who doesn't know what they're looking for, right? And that's just been my experience, and I'm the person who goes looking for it. So I think we have an opportunity to really leverage technology to bridge gaps rather than to make them larger. So how is it that we ensure that technology is a tool that creates opportunities and not obstacles, right? We recognize that technology allows us to reach many people very quickly. And so thinking about those in our community, right, who may not have access to a computer or may not be tech savvy, how do we really center our development of some of these data sets and the softwares that we're using to develop them to be more user-friendly, and thinking about folks who, like I said, may not be tech savvy or may not be used to kind of working through and looking through data sets. So I think that technology can be a benefit and a barrier. I really think it's up to us to really think about how we work through that hurdle, knowing that making the data available to the community is critical, but equally as important is the accessibility and whether or not folks are able to digest that data.
So I agree a lot with what Amber said. I think that it has the potential to really help residents hold us accountable, but I think it helps you know some residents, but there's others that it's not going to be accessible to, um, and you always have to keep that in mind. So some examples of how it works is it does take time, right? And it takes a special data nerd to get in and download things and tell the story and look at it. But if you have one of those like in your civic organization or in your HOA or like in the Growth Action Network or whatever organization you have, it is really empowering because you can have like a team of one or two or three people do deep dives into the data and then explain it to the other people like in that community group. And then they're all empowered because you have this data and you have, a common story that you're telling with it. And you take that as you lobby us, you take it as you go and give testimony to the council. And so I've seen it be like a really powerful thing, for accountability. And it's not every single individual in that group getting on and doing their own thing, but it's saying, hey, who in this group like has the skill to use this and who's willing to do it on behalf of, this organization or that organization, I think is really powerful. One of the things that I've learned over the past 6 years is it's never going to be enough for the government to put things online or to use new technology and say, hey, we've put it here, like everyone come to the new platform we've created or come to our website. There will never be a replacement for showing up in communities, just like where people already are. And if we're wanting to hear from people who don't typically interact with government, like you've got to figure out, where do they already congregate, um, just as they go through their lives. And then government has to show up there. And the data we want them to have, we have to figure out how to take the data and meet them in the spaces they're already at. And so I think it is really powerful for some groups, but again, there's going to be other groups where, again, they're just nothing will replace literally just showing up in someone's community. And so I think it's definitely an integral part of the solution to holding government accountable, but is not complete in and of itself.
It's so funny going third. Sometimes everything's already been said, and Amber and James both covered some amazing stuff. And sometimes it gives me about 20 things I want to say because you've sparked so many interesting thoughts. This is the latter. I may be an IT hammer since I do work in our IT department, and so everything looks like a nail. But that said, I believe technology is playing and will continue to play a huge role in making government more accessible and accountable. There's no way around it. We keep doing more and we don't necessarily get more people to do it, and the problems get more complex. So we have to leverage technology to get some of these efficiency gains, specifically so we can do what James was saying, which is have the bandwidth to get out there, right? So it's a tough challenge, but digital services are how we're doing this. That is one of the huge ways for those that are able to engage. Excuse me. We are going to continue that trend, and our information that we're collecting is public record. That should be going back out to people so that they know how we're doing. That's an accountability piece so that they can be entrepreneurial. So this is a loop in which technology plays a huge role. One of the opportunities I see too is not only to provide the platform, but like both Amber and James mentioned, to play the stewardship role. So if you've got that civic association or local org that's got somebody who can munge the data, fantastic. Do they have a platform that might do that at the county level? And could we link to it? One of the things we do on our open data platform is we publish our information, but we link out to other information and tools so that our portal can become a one-stop place to get to information about Arlington. So this would be great when constituent A calls up and they say, I want to know. And we can say, hey, Crofton already had that. I grew up in Severna Park. So, they did that great. And here, you can use this tool for you, or we can help build that. So again, just one more place where we can leverage technology to make things scale, reproducible, repeatable, and understandable.
Awesome. I might take a pause. Can y'all hear me okay? Is my volume
You're,
on
you're quiet, but we can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. Okay, well, thank you all so much for sharing with us your thoughts on how data access can empower our communities. If anybody has any questions specific to what they were speaking to, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we can get them addressed. There also, while they were speaking, there were some questions that came through that I wanted to make sure we got to. Philip, thanks so much for your comment. You had a question. You noted that it looks like data is used retrospectively a lot of times, which that is true. And your question is, do you use this rich data to predict what will happen going forward? As an example, where might we expect problems to develop in the future, either in operations or outcomes? Do we use data to prospectively suggest a budget that maximizes efficiency and equity? My team does not do the budget, but I do know that that is a piece of county operations. I know OIT has been looking on how to that forecasting and looking forward. And I do think the budget office, they are planning years out. I don't know quite if we're at that space where we really can predict what will happen, but we do use retrospective data, seeing where things were to help us plan for the future. It's not quite an algorithm, which I think your question might be about, like using some sort of algorithm to predictive analysis. But I think it is thinking about the future, where we are, where we want to be, as we're putting together the budget, or even just for programs and programming, and how much money is going to be needed for a program, and how many more people we can serve. And with the office that Amber works in, Equity and Human Rights, is a very new office in our county. So for us as a county, putting in equity and thinking about equity in our decision-making process is is important. And it's something that we are trying to do more intentionally, as at the forefront, rather than thinking of it on the back end. Cynthia, you have a question in here about crime. I believe it's crime data for a particular neighborhood. I know the police department, which we link to on OpenArundel, has a dashboard about their use of force statistics, but I don't believe right now there is any dashboard where you can click into a neighborhood and see the crime statistics for that particular neighborhood. So not right now, but perhaps in the future. And Nicola, I also agree with you, treating data like a new language. It takes time to learn, and if it's something unfamiliar, so hopefully we're here to help people bridge that gap. And then Mary, most of our dashboards, if you reached out, you should be able, reach out again or reach out to me, and maybe I can help get your question answered. We're going to have our email at the end. So if you tell me which dashboard and what your question is, hopefully I can facilitate that. And we have a note from Curtis, who says he wants to thank Anna for not leaving out little people in the community. So thank you for that kind comment, Curtis. So unless there are any other questions, hey, Neri, can you post the last slide with our contact information? I'm going to hand things back over to James, who are going to close us out. But thank you all so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, Elizabeth and team. And thanks everyone for joining us, just being with us today for this discussion. Please plan to join us for our next webinar. It's going to be with the Bureau of Watershed Protection and Restoration, entitled Introduction to Stormwater Management Best Practices. It will be on November 20th at 6 p.m. So it'll be an evening one instead of a lunchtime webinar. But dealing with stormwater runoff, it's a perennial issue faced by both individual homeowners and entire communities. The webinar will address what a stormwater best management practice is, what environmental site design is, and why they matter. So this is actually going to be the first in almost like a sub-series of Engage Arundel webinars that's going to address stormwater issues for communities, because that's something that we have heard a lot about in the office. So we look forward to seeing you there. Have a great rest of your afternoon.